Hi guys, so today I'm going to go through how to add and configure an entity model that you would have purchased from an asset store, how to use the tutorial project from Xyth, and configure to add it to 7 Days to Die. And I've got this creature pack here that I'm going to use, and the creature shell is going to be the creature that we'll go through. So first thing you'll do is you'll find the prefab. If you don't have a prefab, you can actually look at, there might be a mesh or a models folder, and you'll just drag this prefab onto the screen. And this is essentially the character that we're going to try and animate. By default, some of these come with different skeletons. The naming is really different depending on who's created these models. So what we'll do is, given that we need to create a different avatar, if you want to use the existing animations for these guys, then you have to keep this as is. But what we're going to do is we're going to leverage either the default, the zombie animator that comes with the tutorial project. So if you don't have the tutorial project, first thing to do is to get it. And we are going to leverage the zombie animations and possibly change some of the idle animations so that they don't quite look like zombies. So the first thing you need to do is rename the bones so that they align with the Mixamo standards. By default, let's see, we've got the hip. So this would be hips. We'll have to unpack this so that these become accessible to be moved. Create an origin and then move the hips under origin, because normally it goes origin, hips, and then left up leg, left leg. Under that would be the left foot. So let's bring the focus here. Best thing to do is look at where this lands on the character. So this lands at the upper leg parts. The knee is good for that, and then the foot down there. So you know that this structure is good. And below that, you'll see the toes for this guy. So you know you're in the right spot. This would be the right up leg. Same convention as what you have above, just on the right side. And right foot. Now in this character, there are only 2 spines, which normally you'd have 3 in the Mixamo standard. You'd have spine 1, spine 2, and the neck and the shoulders going off spine 2. So what we'll do is we'll keep the name the same, the convention the same, spine 1, and we'll just go off of this. The neck has to be named neck, and the heads named heads. And then what you'll have is the left shoulder, left arm. This gets a little confusing because the way it would work normally is, here you'll see you'll have the hand. So you know that this is the left hand. And here you'll see that it actually points to the hand. But then there are many bones here. Normally the structure is left shoulder, left arm, left forearm, left hand, but there are many more here. So what you have to do is make sure that you're in the right position. So this still looks close to the shoulder. So what we're going to do, given this looks more like the arm, is we're actually going to rename, say undo this, undo that, and we'll put the left arm here. Go back to the left hand. And then let's look at where the left forearm would be. This looks more like the left forearm. Let's do the forearm like that. Yeah, there's enough distance. So obviously the animator for this, the animations depend on all these bones. So it may look a little off whenever you use an animation that uses these, but isn't using the entire bone structure, but it should still work well enough. So let's apply the same changes. Right shoulder, we skipped one. Right arm, right forearm, and then the right hands. Once you've done all of these, the next step would be to export that and then re-rig it in Mixamo. So the way you do that is you right click, you export to FBX, it'll go into the assets folder. We don't need animation, so model only is fine. These settings are fine as well. Once you've done that, you can go into Explorer, into Assets, and you'll find it here. I've already opened Mixamo. So once you've opened Mixamo, go to Upload your character. And hopefully this processes it properly. There we go. Looks pretty good when you look at this. Let's go next. And then let's go to the animations. So let's look at this one. So you see he's a little curved here, but that's probably because he's missing one spine, right? See, he's got his head normally should be up, but that's probably how he was designed anyway. So next step we'll do is we will make sure that we remove the animation so that he's in the normal pose, and we'll download the format for Unity. Perfect. And then what we'll do is we will cut this, go back to our assets folder, and find where we put this. See, no, creature mega pack, we said creature shell. So I'll delete this because this was in previous folder, but normally what I would do is just create a Mixamo folder and dump it in there. And once you go back, you'll see this Mixamo file has been imported. So we can actually get rid of the previous one. And in here, you have to make sure that read writes enabled. Let's apply that. And that the rig is a humanoid rig. Go ahead and apply that and make sure that he's in T-pose. Everything looks fine. Following Xyth tutorials, I make sure that you enforce the T-pose just in case. And then once you're done with that, you just drag it back onto your project. And as you can see, he's in the T-pose here. The next step is you want to make sure that once you've done the re-rigging, that the animator you're going to use is actually going to work. So I believe it's in, under tutorial assets, A20 controllers, there is a A20 zombie controller. So what we'll do is we will make a copy of that and we will drag it into, let's say, the Mixamo folder here. And we'll call it doesn't really matter, creature shell animator. Now you got this animator that you want to associate to the controller. And you want to see if he's actually going to, his bone structure, which should be good. Yeah, should all be there, aligns with the structure that's set in the animator. And this is the idle pose for the zombie. It looks good. We can try another one. The dig, for example. Yeah. So this is all good. Next step for you would be to expand all of these. Only left foot. Expand to the hands. Gee, I don't even think we need the hand. Let's keep it forearm. And you would tag each of these. So the origin is biped roots. The hips and usually it's the middle spine, but we'll put spine 1. Our body, the head is the heads. Left up leg would be left leg. The left leg would be left lower leg. Right up leg would be right leg. And right leg would be right lower leg. Then you go down to the arms, and the left arm would be the left arm. Left forearm would be the left lower arm. Right arm would be right arm. And right forearm would be right lower arm. Now you've tagged all of these. The next thing to do would be to create a ragdoll. So you go into 3D objects, ragdoll. The pelvis is the hips. Left hips are left up leg. You just follow the structure. Left foot, right up leg, right foot. Then you would go left arm, left forearm, right arm, right forearm, the middle spine, and the heads. I usually put around 200 for a total mass. Leave it up to you. And then this creates a ragdoll. So we'll turn on the gizmos. As you can see here, parts of it are pretty off. So we're going to have to fix that because these colliders will be the ones that are used to identify in game where you're hitting your entity. So we'll start with the heads. You go into the collider here. And none of this has to be perfect, but you have to do it well enough so that it makes sense when you're shooting it that you're hitting the heads. The next part would be the spine. So this is a little tricky. So you've got a spine here. When you look at it, it's off to the right of the character. So what we want to do is make sure that, so you've got a spine here and you've got hips there, and the hips are these ones. If you look here, it's this box. So both boxes kind of overlap, and you don't want any overlapping. You want boxes to go to the edge as much as possible. Sometimes it can overlap a little bit, but if it overlaps too much, then the physics in game will be off, especially when you ragdoll them. Sometimes they'll start spinning, going in the air, and it looks really weird. So you want to try and align the hips to where the hips would normally be. But because, let's see, the hips, we'll try and do it so that it makes sense. Let's try it like that. Make it wide. Okay. So you have to think that the left up leg will go up there, right? See the collider here? You have to be careful about that. So we might, let's go back to the hips. Might want to not create hips that are too problematic when it comes to the colliders. So let's say that this is fine. We could actually create a spherical one for the hips, but I'm not going to worry too much about it. Now this one, which is the spine, that one's problematic because it's not even aligned. You can't use the rotation tool to make only the collider change. So the best thing to do is to uncheck the collider, and we're going to create our own. We're going to have to do this a few times. So this would be collider spine 1. And we'll want a box collider. And once you create your own entity here, then you can actually rotate that so that you have a lot more control. So let's pull this in a little bit. Let's look at it in the context of everything else. So it's close to this. We might want to rotate it just a little more. Maybe like that. See what that looks like. Okay, and now we can move it up somewhat so that intersects with the heads. And you shouldn't worry too much about this area here. Chances are you're going to hit enough of the colliders. You could add another collider here if it really was important to you. But the important part for this collider is that you want to have it the exact same tag as the collider that you've replaced that was on the spine. So this was EP body. Now this is a bit too wide, so we'll pull it in. Okay, and let's look at it again. So in the context, this collider is turned off, so I'm not too worried about that. Context of this is, it intersects, but just a little bit, so it's not too bad. So what we want to do next is focus on the legs. So let's go to left up leg, which would be that one. And in terms of the collider, it's pretty good. The only thing you may want to do is to increase the size of it. Yeah. And then let's go to the one on the other side. Let's do the same thing. Increase it somewhat. And now the problematic one is the right leg one. As you can see, the right leg one's not even aligned to the right leg. So we're going to turn that one off. We're going to do the same thing with the left leg one. We're going to turn it off. Then, as we did for the hips, we're going to create a collider for, this is the left leg. And we'll do the same thing for the right leg. Collider, right leg. And then what you want to do is do a capsule collider. Have to do it this way. And rotate it so that it aligns with where you want it to be. Let's look at what this looks like. Yep, that looks like it's the right angle. Now what you want to do is make sure that it is, let's pull it in a little bit. It is good with the intersections. It intersects quite a bit here. So we may want to pull it. It's not this one. It's the collider here. Pull it in just a little bit. See, this is a little bit better. Then because you have to repeat that on the other side, I'm actually going to use the same collider. So I'll delete this one. I'll make a copy with Control D. I'll drag it down to the left leg, and I'll make sure it's renamed here so that I could just move it, that there's a copy of it on this side. The one thing we do have to do though is, even though it's aligned this way, it's not rotated properly. So we'll have to rotate it a little bit. Let's see. A little bit more. Bring it in. That looks pretty good. But it does intersect a lot, so we're going to have to down a little better. Now, depending on what you want it to do, you could create more colliders. It's up to you. Just make sure that they're tagged properly. So this one was the left leg. Left leg is left lower leg. And this one would be right lower leg. Like that. Okay. You'll still see the colliders for the other ones. Don't get rid of them because it will affect the ragdolling. So the only thing that's left for us to do are the arms. Let's go to the arms and the left shoulder. Sorry, left arm. And let's adjust the collider. Where's the left arm again? Have to be careful to not click around, otherwise it deselects it. Then do the same for the left lower arm. Bring that around mid-hand. That looks like on top. Looks pretty good. Go back to the right arm. Do the same. Forearm. Right hand. Bring it in. Looks pretty good. Now we've got our entire ragdoll defined. Let me see. So, see here, they don't connect. So we're going to have to look at the spine, which is the top one. No, that's right. We create a separate collider for the spine. And we're going to have to, unfortunately, bring it in closer. Yeah, that's close enough. Again, you could do something like this. You could say, you know what, I don't like the fact that you can shoot through this. Let's see, where is it? Actually, it's not that bad because it's over here. But you could bring it up and say, I want this part here to be what I look at hitting, and then create another one below. But we're not going to do that just for simplicity's sake. We're just going to leave it as is. So here's the entire set of colliders. They all connect. This one connects to this. This closes up. So we're pretty good. The next part would be to assign, there's a large collider. So you could look at there's template. So there's a large collider and there's an icon tag. So you want to Control D, drag it into your entity, just quickly rename them. Reason why I do that is because they're already tagged. The icon tag is what you'd see being used in Twitch whenever they have things above the entity's heads. You just want to align it right above the heads. And the collider itself is usually what you use when you want to run over them with a vehicle. You don't want it to be too big. It doesn't have to be the size of the entity, because otherwise, if it's too large, they won't go into doors. You'll have some issues with that. So let's make sure that this is saved. The one thing you could do that I'm not going to do here, I mean, it's easy enough to do, is you see all these gores? All you have to do is, let's say we pick the ones at the hip level. So these are at the hip level because they're at the same level as these. So you just essentially copy them, bring them to the hip level, rename. And this would be the gore if you were to sever the leg. So all you really have to do is make sure that it's properly centered around where you'd expect this to sever off. Like that. And you do this, you follow the same thing for every level. For this case, I'm just gonna skip that step. So this guy will have some gore if the legs come off, but won't have any gore if the head comes off or anything like that. Once you're done with that, that's pretty much it. So what you want to do is you want to I create myself a completed folder. You want to drag this into the folder and then right click and create yourself an asset bundle. So for me, I put it in here, let it build. And while this builds, what I've done is I've created a little entity XML that essentially takes the new entity and assigns it the zombie bow template, and you can change the walk type as required. And we're going to essentially try and load this into the game. Obviously, the test to make sure something's running well. So let's try this one. Now this is going to take a little bit more time than usual because I'm loading the game using an overhaul mods. But if it was just vanilla, it'd go much faster. And while we do that, the next thing we'll do, because we haven't done so yet, is to change the animations. So we've got this animator here. So we'll go into the animator, this crazy web of states, and there's a bunch of layers as well, to make sure that it doesn't act like a zombie. Because right now what we've done essentially is we've used the zombie controller to animate it, And so whenever it's in an idle state, it'll be a little spastic. Whenever it's running, it'll run like a zombie, depending on the walk type that you've assigned. So we'll actually, while this is loading, we can start doing that. So what we'll do is we will first look at the walk. So we've picked walk type 7. So if you go in the base layer, you'll see a bunch of walk types here. So walk type 7 is this one. You see T1, T4, T2. These refer to the numbers of the walk type. And then you'll have to go into the blend tree. And in the blend tree, you've got the various states. So idle 3 is the one where it's a little spastic. And you'll want to replace this with another idle if you don't want it to look like that. You want it to stay put. So what you could do...
hey, you there. What the hell up? Can't do this alone.
Let's go back in game. Just make sure the entity is working. So let's kill all these guys. Kill. Can't type. All right. Let's give ourselves spawning rights. So we'll put everything in pause. I think it was creature shell. So there's our entity. As you can see, it's a little spastic. Let's unpause. It obviously has all the sounds. Yeah, it'll try and attack. So the animation go into God mode. See that the head's tilting a little bit, so we can fix that in XML. Let's make sure that the look at angle is set to 0. But it's essentially working. Works well enough. In terms of the... See if we can make it run. Yeah. See, in terms of the running, that's what it looks like. So what we're going to do is we're going to get out of this. Every time you rebuild, you have to get out of the game. We're going to change these animations. So we talked about changing the animations in the walk type 7. So in the templates, there is, if you go through A20 final, then human animations, mocap, mobility starter, animation, root motion, you've got some examples of idle states. So this will be the idle that just stays there. So we'll use the same for the walk forwards. And the run forward would be the jog. So that takes care of that idle state. But in terms of the idle state, you have it in a number of spots. As you can see, whenever you have your spawn state, the zombie idle is there. So you just want to pick the same idle. I think it goes to, so this goes to default empty state. Default empty state, again, has the idle. Let's replace that. And it could be in other spots, but this is pretty much all you have to do in terms of changing the animation. So essentially anything that has the humanoid type of animation, you can essentially, replace inside the animator that you've picked. So this is mostly the movement animator. This one will be the attack. So this is the layer where you set all the attacks. So you could, if you want to change when they do right attacks, where they do these different types of attacks depending on how fast they move or anything like that. You'll change it there. This is the pain layer. This is where they get hit and all the different types of areas where they get hits. It's a lot to change if you actually want to do that. And this seems like another attack layer for specific cases like crawlers, etc. So we've changed that. We will essentially collapse all of this so that we go back to here, delete it, and put it back in so we can rebuild our bundle. And hopefully it won't take as much time to load the game, given that we had created a new game last time. Right, so let's continue this. Let's see if there's anything else that I could cover here. There is one thing that I actually forgot to do. It's the footsteps. So the footsteps also have to be included. So I just do a Control D and put it at the origin. Rename. Put it there. So don't forget to do that. The other thing to maybe look into is so these are the bones, these are the colliders, and then you've got this object. Not sure what left is. But essentially, this one only has one, right? So it's not that big. Depending on the entity, if they fall forwards, you'll find that sometimes the part of the model gets clipped. You want to edit the bounds and just give it a little bit of more room on each side. You'll find it sometimes when you walk up to an entity, all of a sudden you get close to them and part of their face disappears or something like that. So you'll have to look at all of these different objects and look at the bounds and extend them a little bit. And once you extend them and you re-import them, then they should be fine. So what we should see with this entity now is that when they're in their idle state, they're no longer spastic. And when they're running or walking, they don't actually run and walk like a zombie, but run and walk more like a human. Put it in pause. Put the shell. There. Already, when you look at their stance, you can tell they're standing way more upright. Right? Much different. So this is their idle. So they're moving, but they're no longer spastic. And then if you were to let them move forward, see the side-to-side arms? Much different. And then let's see if we can get them to run. It's jogging. See, yeah, it was jogging. It's just not a fast runner. And there we go. So the only thing you'd want to fix is the look at angle. So in the XML, you have a property look at angle and put 0. And that would essentially fix their head being to the sides. It'll look straight. It'll essentially look like whenever we spawn them like this. It'll be straight versus to the side. And that's because they're trying to look at you. They're trying to follow you, right? And it just breaks their neck. So I found that even if you leave it straight, it looks fine in game. They don't need to look at you. That kind of covers it. I hope this was useful, and good luck.